Well, I have finally done it. I have played my very first Castlevania game, the original one, the NES classic that started the entire legacy of horror-y, monster-slaying, platformy gameplay, mixed with some pretty incredible video game music. I know that with this channel, the kind of, the gist of it is I didn't play a lot of these great games growing up, wasted a bunch of my time, but this was one series that, you know, kind of feels like it hurts your gamer credibility a little bit. This is up there with like Resident Evil, how I did my first Resident Evil game on the channel. Like, there's just some franchises where it's just little embarrassing to say I never played one. A few times I have tried getting into this series, it just never clicked. I tried Aria of Sorrow on the Game Boy and another one at some point, I don't remember, but didn't give it enough time and kind of just forced myself to, sit down, give it a go this time, and ended up loving it, and I look forward to playing some more games from the series. I completely understand the love for this franchise now. I probably would have been a huge fan of it if I was a kid when it was kicked off. Castles, monsters, pretty badass base story, honestly. It's kind of wild, even though you're not hit with it in the game itself. I had to go looking a little bit after I beat it to learn what in the world was actually completely going on here. The game is set in 1691, after a period of peace in Transylvania due to Christopher Belmont defeating Count Dracula with the vampire killer, which apparently is the whip that you're wielding in the game. And then over time, this age of kind of peace and says honoring the resurrection of Jesus Christ weakened with the people, and they fell back into a darkness, or maybe even a craving of that darkness. And during an Easter celebration on that 100th year, bad men held a black mass hoping to resurrect Count Dracula. And in this, one of the wildest things that I learned is that Dracula's castle isn't bound to a physical location in the world. After he was summoned, his castle also just reappears. And then when this happens, the character you play in the game is Simon Belmont. He needs to head out and bring Dracula down again, being the current wielder of the vampire killer and a member of the Belmont clan. For such a simply constructed game, actually has a pretty interesting backstory, and I'm sure there's even more once I get going into more of the franchise. One game at a time, though. For a game that was brought to the NES almost 40 years ago now, I still thought it had great atmosphere, charm, and at least for me, an extreme amount of challenge. Now, I was not playing the original on an NES. I streamed it using the Castlevania Anniversary Collection on the PlayStation. I would say that at some points, the difficulty even walks a fine line where it might toying with crossing to unfairness, but we'll get to that. From the very first moment you kind of enter into the game, into the castle, it kind of just, the whole mood of the game grabs you. An eerie stillness and mystery to the castle, tons of different enemies, torches, architecture. The enemies are just kind of like all classic looking horror creations. And then that music kind of just wraps it all up in a nice package. I really think that sometimes music can be overlooked or just kind of like, oh, it's nice that it has some good music, but I think the music is pretty large in a lot of these older games, especially where the graphics didn't absolutely blow your brains out. It kind of like the perfect mix of like arcadey, haunting, and heroic. Kind of just makes you feel pumped up and like a badass, able to take down the difficulty of this game. I actually hear a ton of games from the NES era have really solid soundtracks like this, so I'm pretty pumped to get into some more of them, honestly. And this game just had those melodies that they're so catchy, you just find yourself humming them at work the next day, trying to sidetrack yourself from the pains of inflation. So, getting into the gameplay, Castlevania kind of has a reputation that precedes itself, and that it is very, very hard, tough game, and it was definitely earned. I felt that way. The controls are very rigid, stiff. The jumps are locked when you commit. You can't move in the air. And if an enemy hits you near a ledge, you are just destroyed. You're going down, instant kill. And then on top of that, the stairs could be really annoying. So many times I fell through stairs to my death, but you'll learn it over time. And in some specific areas, though, the amount of enemies they throw at you and like the perfection you need, until you have that muscle memory like really ingrained in you, it can feel unfair. I get it. Call me a bitch. I don't care. And that's where I think playing in a modern way with this Anniversary Collection and being able to use a save state kind of balances that out, where if you make it to the boss room and you overcome that really, really difficult run, you can make a save state, just keep spawning at the boss room and attempting it until you beat them. Because there's some runbacks that the first time through would have really taken a while for me to get down. Just the certain enemy placements with those holes in these platforms and the rhythm to the jumping, and for me it was difficult. But that also makes the game completely satisfying. Now I do have to say how I mentioned muscle memory. I went back the footage I took for this video because I didn't want to show you my ugly ass. I actually was able to make it through multiple of the levels without dying once, and then I was able to beat Dracula, the final boss, without dying. Got to him, beat him first try. Now, the first time when I was streaming the game, it took me, I don't know, 3 hours to beat Dracula. Maybe, something like that. It was pretty rough. But when you finally beat the boss, learn what to do, make it past that section that seemed impossible, and you're stuck on it for an hour, feels pretty good. You feel like you learned something. I'm not gonna pretend that it's like perfect or something. I do think if there was one thing I would change gameplay wise, it would just be that if you could change your direction while jumping, because sometimes you'll jump and something will come on the screen or pop out of the water or something, and it's kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Old games are hard. So I don't think the save states like make it easy mode, but they make it more reasonable if you don't have like a ton of time. And now that I've played the game, I feel like I don't need the save state, but the first time through, I think it makes it a lot more reasonable and user-friendly and open to newcomers, because you don't lose any of the tension or the challenge. It just eliminates that frustration of losing progress that took you like an hour, and then you have to redo it, and you don't have the muscle memory yet, and it's, yeah. Speaking of the gameplay, the enemy design is pretty good. The monsters are fun, the boss battles are cool. I honestly just found ways to cheese them using the holy water for the most part, but it's just hard to dodge and everything with not being able to, with those rigid controls and everything, so they kind of feel janky if you're not cheesing them. And all the enemies feel fair. It's just certain situations when you're like how the level design is with those enemies, like these little things that hop around, these little guys. In chat, people were calling them the flea men or something. Maybe that's what they're called, maybe that's not, I have no idea. They can literally like jump through parts of the screen and just knock you off of steps in certain areas, so it's kind of just a combination of what enemy is there with the environment that you're in, and when those come together at certain times, it makes it really annoying. Same thing with there's a room with Medusa heads and these knights. That one was pretty rough. Level playing field, straight away, all the enemies are easy. It's just depends how they throw them at you in certain environmental situations. But yeah, like I said, there's no really like covered story in the game. It's kind of just the levels of the game, which there are 6 levels, stages. They're just platform through, beat the enemies, and at the end there's a boss battle. Pretty straightforward, basic stuff. If I was gonna describe it, I would say very simple on the surface of, gameplay, but pretty rich in its mood and personality and the atmosphere. Wrapping that all together just feels like a complete piece of timeless gaming history. Even with all of its rough edge, it kind of just has a nice magic that's hard to capture. Playing with a save state, I would probably give the game like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. If I didn't have a save state, it would probably be lower. I might not even be done it yet. Probably would take me like multiple weeks to beat this game with how bad I am. Who knows? But pretty solid. Definitely will continue playing Castlevania games. All right, guys, take care. Peace.